right. With programmability and automation, I know some of these things we've kind of already looked at, but just kind of recapping, our traditional CLI, there can be some drawbacks or some things that we can see as far as 20, 30 years ago. Sure, the CLI was built for human interaction, but it wasn't very scalable. If we had 15 or 25 devices in our environment, sure, configuring them each individually, not a big deal, right? But we have to sometimes utilize things like copy and paste, and our configurations are going to be prone to error. And repetitive tasks, right, aren't super easy to automate just traditionally from the CLI. So with automation and programmability, we're trying to address those things. We also will start to be able to see version control being something that we can leverage for configuration changes and being able to automate systems to perform things like testing. But obviously, the automation portion of it helps us to increase device provisioning and make it more simple and more effective. Data collection and telemetry is going to be easier. We can certainly utilize automation for things like compliance checks and all the good stuff that we sort of brought up in the previous topic. So with automation scenarios, we see a very easy example of having a spreadsheet with host names and IPs, and rather than having to update this spreadsheet manually, we can reduce lots of hours of tedious work just with automation. Another example might be deploying access lists, maybe across firewalls or across multiple routers, or whatever it is that we're trying to apply. We can certainly use automation to be able to modify each of the configs based on IPs, but still implement some of the same overall concepts from one centralized place. All right, so another example of automation might be registering devices through Cisco's FMC. And of course, another use case, rather than leveraging something like SSH to connect to our management plane or our control plane, we can use things like netconf for REST or an X API or BRPC. So when we look at a lot of our systems ops teams, sure, they may have been using open source software for many years, Linux, Ansible, Chef, Ruby, but now we can also, in addition to using open source software, utilize our enterprise NetOps software as well. And we see some examples throughout this course on some of the different types of tools that we can use, but all of this automation is supported in NXOS and Cisco UCS and SD-WAN and Cisco's DNA. So, we're starting to just see this becoming more and more prevalent. All right, and then last but not least, when we look at our API sandbox, lots of different types of technologies when introducing programmability, right? So in consideration for aspects like Linux and our controller APIs, we can use the knowledge of Cisco APIs for, prereqs for automation. We can use Linux tools and all of this auto testing, whether it's pre or post changes, improves overall predictability of our network resources.